Thank you, Ian, and thank you to Policy Exchange for hosting us this afternoon. When oppositions are casting about for magic money forests, talk can turn to public service reform. Talk is easy, delivery is hard. I'm proud of what this Conservative government has done working with the civil service to modernise public service, and prouder still that there's been no let-up in that process of continuous improvement, and we continue to deliver results. We boast a modern, outward-looking civil service, distant in every way from the characterisations of Yes Minister. One can say that while still having fond memories of the series. I was saddened to read the death last week of John Nettleton, who starred as the gloriously devious Cabinet Secretary Sir Arnold in the series. Because of how much everything has changed in the last 12 years, we can afford to smile at Sir Arnold's retort. When the Minister wished to deliver a speech on reform, he commented, "Once you specify in advance what a project is supposed to achieve and who is responsible, the whole system will fall apart. We would end up with the whole squalid world of professional management. We already have to move them around every 2 to 3 years to stop this nonsense. Any more transparency, and we'll be moving them once a fortnight." I will revisit Sir Arnold later. We've made great strides, but as the Fulton report put it as long ago as 1968, we have found no instance where reform has pressed ahead too rapidly. The stiff wind of competition provides an impetus for the private sector to modernise or die in health or education, and ever more informed and aware public demand improvements. Our armed forces, through active combat, through allied exercises, and through intense study of our adversaries, are acutely aware of the pressure to change to meet an ever-evolving threat. The 500,000 colleagues that make up our civil service are critical to our country and must be equally determined to deliver change. They know that modernisation is no end in itself. It is about delivering to every part of our country and every family, and doing so better, more effectively, cheaper. For the overall UK productivity challenge to be resolved, the public sector must up its game. We have two great advantages on which to draw in continuing this push for reform. The most important is the continuity of Conservative government. In 2015, I was fortunate to be elected to succeed Francis Maude as MP for Horsham. Last year, I again followed in his footsteps in being appointed as Minister for the Cabinet Office. I am delighted that my predecessors commissioned Francis Maude to report on civil service governance and accountability. I look forward to receiving his report in due course. But today is not intended to venture, yet, into those broader horizons, but to focus on the modernisation agenda being driven daily across government. Francis's groundbreaking work between 2010 and 2015 created levers for continuous improvement. This was a vital backdrop to the major step forward crystallised by Michael Gove as MCO in 2021. The Declaration of Government Reform, jointly agreed by permanent secretaries and the Cabinet, remains a consistent template for reform, and one which we are continuing to deliver. I want to set out how the changes wrought since 2010, backed up by continuous attention to delivery and innovation, are bearing fruit. I said we had two great advantages, the first being consistent political drive for modernisation. The second is the people with whom I work throughout the civil service. Unlike some of my predecessors, as Ian mentioned, I've had first-hand experience of working as a civil servant. Between 2008 and 2009, I served on secondment in a Treasury battling under enormous pressure the huge dangers of the financial crash as the UK provided world-leading innovative solutions. We have all seen firsthand how the modern generation of civil servants again rose to the challenge, whether it was through the swift introduction of furlough protecting the jobs of nearly 9 million Britons at peak, or the delivery of the world's first COVID vaccination programme. There are brilliant people in our civil service, but I know there are many, as can be the case in any organisation, that feel frustrated and stifled by bureaucracy. Alongside the Cabinet Secretary, I shared with the civil service colleagues at Civil Service Live in Cardiff last week that we need every colleague to be calling out waste and inefficiency, determined to end the frustrations I know many of them share. They can do so with more specialisation, more access to outside voices and fresh ideas, staying longer in post, delivering certainty on what we are seeking to achieve, and benefiting from crisp evaluation on whether we have, while embracing the digital future which will transform all our working lives. And that's what I want to touch on today. In 2010, When the Conservatives first took office, the central government functions, including commercial, IT and digital, property, major projects, finance and HR, did not exist. The disciplines which underpin the commercial sector were at best segmented, at worst viewed as odious or countercultural. Since then, the embedding of the functions, led universally by highly driven, effective individuals with outside experience, has replaced one-off jolts to the system with ongoing rigour. I'm pleased to announce that a total of 4.4 billion savings were delivered by the central government functions in the financial year to March 22. These were split between audited cashable of 3.4 billion, non-cashable of £1 billion, and that's been published on gov.uk earlier today. This wasn't a one-off event. In the year prior to that, central government functions also delivered 3.4 billion worth of audited savings. That means around 8 billion of cashable and non-cashable savings over 2 audited years, and we're similarly confident about the 22-23 period. We've achieved this by thinking differently and driving success. The components of these savings vary year in, year out. In the last audited year, over £1 billion of savings were delivered by identifying and correcting fraudulently claimed UC. And fraud is an area of endeavour post the establishment of the public sector fraud activity that is likely, public sector fraud authority, I should say, which is likely to grow further. I'm delighted that to take this work further across the whole remit of the functions and efficiency, the Treasury are releasing today a government efficiency framework, ensuring consistent reporting of efficiencies across the whole of government, and reporting processes to track delivery and drive continuous improvement. Another step along the remorseless but critical path of delivering improved productivity across the civil service. Our modernisation work is not limited to the services delivered by central government. The UK's public bodies, which play a vital role in delivery, but whose independence of action can risk them being divorced from a culture of continuing improvement, are subject to reviews. To date, we've launched 71 of the initial 125 public body reviews, which will be covering 90% of all ALB expenditure. Most of the largest ALBs will be reviewed in the next 18 months, benefiting from experienced teams and the active support of ALB boards. Completed reviews have recommended actions to improve governance, capability, and the use of resources to deliver the best possible value for the taxpayer. So as a government, we provide services. We also spend across the public sector £300 billion annually on procurement, and we deliver enhancements to our national infrastructure. After a substantial effort, we are now within weeks of the procurement bill clearing both houses. In a rare example of government adopting the refreshing motto of keep it simple, stupid, it cuts down the 350 different procurement regulations founded on EU procurement to create one simple rulebook. It will help set the framework of an ever more outcomes-based approach to procurement so that we can buy goods and services without telling the market exactly how to build a bridge, instead engaging with them and how they can best cross the water. You may be amazed what we'll discover. On which subject? We know that better infrastructure delivers better productivity. Over the last 2 years, the government's major projects portfolio has doubled in size to oversee nearly 250 programmes with a whole life cost of nearly £800 billion. Bringing more projects into the central portfolio has created better central oversight, enabling more transparency. 89% of those projects now have a green or amber delivery confidence, up from 64% in 2020. So this rigorous focus on efficiency, on improving procurement, and better project management is delivering the foundation to improve our productivity and enhance our public services. When Francis introduced the functions, it amounted to a revolutionary step, the Victorian departmental silo model being complemented by a lattice of cross-departmental experts with which most of the commercial sector will be familiar. 12 years on, they continue to flourish, they continue to deliver, and the GEF will make their job easier and the results even more transparent. Functions delivering is but one aspect of the declaration to which we as ministers and civil servants are committed. To continue the process of reform, we need to be open to the views and experiences of those outside the public sector who recognise the extraordinary opportunities it provides and want to add their talents to the many we employ. We need to ensure that they are supported in a modern workplace environment, making the most of the myriad opportunities of data and AI. And we need to help them to focus their time and energy on what works. First, on people. For too long, policy making and leadership at the civil service has been too London-centric. That's why we committed to relocating 22,000 civil service roles out of London by 2030. This year, we've crossed a major milestone, having relocated over 12,000 roles out of London and the South East. That's more than half our total commitment in just the first 3 years, and more than 75% of our ambition to relocate 15,000 roles by 2025. We're also well on our way to the target of 50% UK-based SCS outside London, with 30% already now based outside the capital. We've launched multiple departmental second headquarters, including Cabinet Office's own second headquarters in Glasgow. The Cabinet Office is not alone in going to Scotland. Nearly 20% of the roles moved out of London have been relocated to Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, with additional government hubs going into Edinburgh, Cardiff, and Belfast. We've also launched a major policy campus in Sheffield, creating the largest centre of policy making outside London. The benefits of this to levelling up, to VFM, to strengthening our union are important, obvious, and are rightly, regularly being praised. I want, however, to be a little selfish. I see the benefits in simple terms. The opportunity it provides to recruit brilliant civil servants, many of whom I've met in Scotland and Wales, the North and the South West, into our teams. I believe we'll find further scope to enhance places for growth, including by focusing on our arm's-length bodies. But we need to do more beyond PFG to broaden our base of talent. Above all, we need to be an employer that welcomes new blood at every stage of someone's career. Just 1 in 5 new entrants to the senior civil service are currently external. I want to ensure that every potential recruit who wants to bring their expertise to bear in the public interest can feel able to apply to do so. And I want us to be able to harness that talent where we know it will add value. That's why last year we cemented a much stronger requirement for all SCS roles to be advertised externally, a move I believe was first recommended by our hosts here today, Policy Exchange. It's no longer possible to hold an internal recruitment competition for a senior civil servant without explicit ministerial approval. Whilst this change is already making a difference, we can and should do more. It's not enough simply to advertise a job externally. Currently, the street-to-seat recruitment process can take as long as 80 days, if not longer, and that's often pre-vetting. If we are fishing in a competitive pool for talent, trying to persuade those with much to give to turn their back on other opportunities and to follow the rewarding path of public service, we need to get real about how we perform as recruiters. We must ensure that every aspect of civil service recruitment, from how we advertise to how we recognise external expertise to how we select and onboard recruits, supports good external candidates. So we're asking departments and professions to trial alternative recruitment approaches. They will experiment with running recruitment campaigns with simplified job adverts, ridding them of whitewall speak. And they will speed up recruitment with a focus on cutting the bureaucracy that puts off or times out brilliant candidates. And to help speed up onboarding, we're improving our vetting system. UK security vetting are recruiting new staff and improving processes and systems to bring KPIs up to the levels we need to see. We are determined to deliver a radical overhaul of policy, process, and systems. Growing our talent pool is great, but our civil servants need the tools to finish the job. A revolution is underway in digital and AI, and our civil servants must be part of it. Taxpayers will rightly demand the same ease of access to services and support that will become second nature in the private sector. We need to be better at utilising the digital talent we already have within the civil service and in stressing its importance. This September, our government-wide initiative, One Big Thing, will be launched. The focus for 2023 is data upskilling. It will engage every single civil servant, that's 500,000 training days, on data this autumn. This shows our determination to build knowledge and to deliver. Over the next 2 years, we're rolling out 2 new digital platforms to enable us to understand, develop and utilise the skills of our workforce and help staff move more easily between departments. The Government Skills Campus will provide a single platform across government with better access to the learning civil servants need. It will use skills data to intelligently drive the right content to learners and to inform workforce planning. A second new platform will then enable all civil servants to move from one department to another at pace and without friction. Not only will this save money, approximately £100 million over the next 5 years, it means it will be easier to move people with the right skills and experience into the right roles in government, placing colleagues in more satisfying roles and gleaning the benefit of targeted experience. Digital and data innovations like these are the defining tools of the 21st century, but they can only be effective when senior leaders understand them. I'm delighted that we are on track to exceed our ambition for 50% of fast stream hires for 2023 to have a STEM subject background, but we can't wait decades as they progress. Through the Digital Excellence Programme, we will be equipping government leaders with these skills, starting with 3,000 senior leaders this year. We can offer digital technicians the most extraordinary opportunities to put their talents to the test in delivering solutions which matter to people day in, day out. I know how competitive that talent pool is, but what better way to invest in your staff than to give them the opportunity of taking on some of the most fascinating challenges. To enhance our secondment programme, we are developing a specific digital secondments pilot with our digital team in the Central Digital and Data Office. I know that there are people from the best tech firms in the country who believe in public service, who want to help with the biggest challenges facing society today. So we will create a pathway for them to join the civil service through a secondment and empower them to drive real, tangible change. We must attract and retain the best in digital talent so that we can harness the power of digital data and technology to deliver most efficiently and effectively for the public. Our groundbreaking roadmap for digital and data encompasses 21 ambitious commitments to be achieved by 2025. Among these commitments, we've pledged to elevate 50 of the government's top services to a great standard, and we are introducing one login and vital new system that will allow citizens to access all central government services effortlessly using a single account. We will need to ensure that gov.uk, with over 1 million visits a day, 29 billion page views since 2012, provides a service equal to what we'd all expect to see in the private sector. That's why we've established a team to lead on digital service transformation across government. This team identified the opportunities, the blockers, and the support we need to improve those services. And that's also why 32 organisations across government have adopted the same pay framework to drive recruitment and retention of digital professionals, saving taxpayer money by reducing the reliance on contractors and managed services. Recent months have seen a huge development in artificial intelligence technology, presenting, if developed appropriately, clear opportunities for government. Our ambition is to use AI confidently and responsibly where it matters most, to improve public services and boost productivity. Our central team of digital and tech experts is creating a practical framework to put this technology to work across the civil service, solving problems of privacy, ethics and security, and bringing insights and best practice from industry. I'm excited to announce that following last year's pilot, the Incubator for Automation and Innovation, known as IAI, will be a permanent civil service team focused on some of our most important and intractable challenges. And right at the heart of government, the number 10 Innovation Fellowships programme is bringing in AI experts from industry and academia to help solve problems in public service using AI and automation. We're creating a data marketplace to break down barriers to sharing data inside government. But we also know the potential for government data to drive value and innovation in the economy. Therefore, as recommended by the Balance Review, our ambition is to make the marketplace available to third parties outside government, such as businesses and researchers, and our aim by 2025 is to achieve just that. We will launch and scale a cross-government digital apprenticeship programme to support recruitment and the development of 500 new DDAT professionals this financial year. It's an old adage that the only mistake you can make is by not learning from it. That is why, since the declaration of government reform, we established the Evaluation Task Force to improve government programme evaluation, to better inform decisions on whether programmes should be continued, expanded, modified or stopped. I learned to my exasperation as Minister for Defence Procurement that while I was desperately securing cash to back brilliant, innovative ideas, without rigorous ministerial testing, others could quietly languish long after it became apparent that they just weren't fit for purpose. In innovation, a failure is when a project is allowed to continue when all hope is lost. Fail fast, reinvest, and the same must be true of policy. We need evaluation baked in from the outset in everything we do. Yes, this can identify where policy, whisper it not, doesn't deliver. That can happen. Where it does, let's act, not hide. A productive public sector is not one which is too shy to accept that not everything works. In the commercial world, it's known, recognised, embraced. We need to lose our hang-ups. But we can and must learn also from our successes. The DLUC supporting families evaluation showed not only the impact of the policy in reducing adult and juvenile custodial sentences, but was robust enough to know that for every £1 we spent on the programme, it delivered £2.28 of economic benefits. The task force has provided advice on 211 evaluations across government, covering £115 billion of spending, and there's a lot more to do. On the basis that only idiots learn from their own mistakes, the wise from other people's, I'm delighted to announce that the Evaluation Task Force is launching an evaluation registry, which will provide for the first time a single online focus for evaluations across government. The evaluation registry has been built from the ground up to be the best in class in driving evidence-based policymaking. When it launches, it will be one of the biggest stores of information on social policy evaluations in the world, containing over 2,000 evaluations from the outset. It will be available to all government departments this year, and in the future, supported by funds worth over £50 million for evaluations to generate new evidence in critical areas of policymaking. So let's finally get back to our fictional Sir Arnold. Were he to return to our screens today, he would, I hope, be disquieted by the notion that a new recruit may start their career, progress their career, and end their career as a permanent secretary without necessarily ever working within 10 miles of Peter Jones. What's more, talent is not only arriving directly into the upper echelons of the SCS, it's being actively pursued and welcomed. We are embracing the opportunities of digital and what that will mean for us making us more efficient, and improving the services that we deliver for the taxpayer.
Thank you very much for that speech. Really strong ambitions on capability, AI and evaluation that you've laid out there. I'd like to start, if I may, I'll ask a couple of questions first and then throw it open to the floor. I'd like to start with where you ended on evaluation. Recently we've seen a number of cases where arm's length bodies have introduced policies such as nutrient neutrality, for example, or some of those introduced in the financial sphere, which have had huge negative impacts on the economy, which you and some of your colleagues have then later had to unpick, and I know that they are going forward at the moment. Will your evaluation hub also apply to the decisions of arm's length bodies? And what will be the feedback loop in ensuring that if evaluation shows that a policy is failing, it can be changed rapidly?
Right. I would draw a distinction in between where bodies have been established by legislation to do something differently and separately, and the current role of the Evaluation Task Force, which is focused on government, and there is plenty to go for with that. Having said that, we rely on arm's length bodies. They deliver over 240 billion pounds worth of services for the government every year. We have to be extremely live to the value for money that we achieve from those ALBs. That's why we have the review process. As I say, reviews covering 90% of those bodies will be conducted and concluded by midway through 2025. We will learn from those processes. So there are many examples where we can do things better. We can assist ALBs with ensuring that they are absolutely focused and absolutely efficient in what they do. There's a very simple tool we produce for just benchmarking some of the costs around those ALBs, so that the boards of those ALBs can actually determine for themselves where are we on that spectrum, what more can we do to be more efficient and more effective in what we do.
Thank you. If we go on to AI, obviously agree about the huge potential. What are some of the areas which you're specifically looking at in which it can be deployed most rapidly?
So firstly, there is huge opportunity, but we're very conscious that we need to do this right. So the vast opportunity that AI has to deliver for the public sector, it needs to be done in the right way. We need to ensure that we have to take the public with us and the confidence with us. The worst thing would be to launch programs and then through grounds of bias or other factors, people lose confidence. But we're getting there. At the top level of government, working through the guidelines and the support that we need to give to make this most effective, but also throughout government, there are pilots launched and working on defined areas of policy which are delivering. So, an example, the Royal Navy using AI as part of their virtual recruitment campaigns. The DfE have used it to identify businesses that should be employing apprentices. Inside the Cabinet Office, the Public Sector Fraud Authority, to which I referred, and there's a massive opportunity with AI in countering fraud, and they are absolutely working through what the opportunities are. So there are, step by step, there are huge numbers of opportunities that we will be taking on board, as well as looking overarching government as a whole. Where do we take this?
Fantastic. And one last question before I go to the floor, and this is focused on capability. So it's fantastic the steps you're taking to bring more talent into the civil service at all levels, from fast stream right up to the senior civil service. I'd like to focus a little bit more on the management of talent, though, once it's in. And I think there are a couple of things I would draw out. So one is, if you look at some of the sort of, policy-making departments, so health, business, education, if you look at the number of civil servants that are dismissed for poor performance each year, it's typically fewer than 1 in 1,000. And then on the other side of the coin, where we have brilliant civil servants, it can be quite challenging for managers to reward them with pay, which is obviously a classic way of motivating in the private sector, and particularly at the cost of living. What are you doing to look at both better recognition financially of capability of civil servants, but also ensuring that the culture changes, and so that those small numbers who are not delivering are able to be effectively managed out?
Yeah, the private sector, having experienced both, the private sector has many advantages. There are huge swathes of the private sector where numbers come into it. You can see how someone's performed, and you can take a view. I'm very used to those disciplines. A lot of us in this room are. It is much harder in the civil service when you're dealing with policy outcomes to get really across. But we must have that rigour. You're absolutely right in asking the question. So, and I'll tell you something else. What I always find in the open sessions I do with civil servants is they share the enthusiasm to be managed well, to be managed successfully, and to have the ability to progress their careers. I remember once in the MOD, I'd asked a particular question to a particular area of the MOD, and weeks later it came back with the wrong answer. Happened occasionally. But when I went, but this had regularly happened. When I went, I made that great mistake of, Bismarck always told people, not to look at the sausage machine, just enjoy the sausage. And I actually went through all the email chain. The first person who had been asked the question, right at the coalface, she came up with exactly the right answer. It was absolutely perfect. It's exactly what I wanted to know. It had then been improved through 6 layers of management before it finally reached me and was gobbledygook and missed the point. So there are people within the civil service who are as keen as you or I to make certain that that talent is developed. Now, one answer is capability-based pay. This is something that has been talked about. The civil service and ministers are determined to deliver it. What that can't be is I have been on 6 courses, therefore I'm worth more than the individual who's been on 3 courses. That doesn't work for anyone. So it is an absolute priority, but what it should be tracking is people's ability to deliver on a project, that the actual experience that they bring to bear and proven ability to deliver, and their productivity. So it's hard to compare one task with another, but if you can do something with 10 people rather than with 100 people, that is a net gain for the taxpayer that should be reflected. So what I do want to, I've got no problems with us paying civil servants more for being more productive, more capable, and ensuring that the taxpayer gets a better deal. And I hope that what we develop over the course of the next year on capability-based pay will help to achieve just that.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing it. Now, we'll turn to questions from the floor. Also, we have an online audience here. Please raise a virtual hand if you have a question, and then it will be put through. So, hands, gentleman just there, and then we'll have the two gentlemen in the front, left and right.
Thank you. Martin Beckford from the Daily Mail. You mentioned the places for growth. The evidence base that was written in 2018 but only published recently predicted that substantial numbers of civil servant jobs will be made redundant by AI. Could you just say, has that started to happen, and how many jobs in total do you expect will be made redundant by automation? Thanks.
Thank you. We'll take them in batches of 3. And I should have said actually, but please, as you did indeed, but could everyone else also just say your name and your organisation? Two at the front.
Hi Jeremy, Toby Markson from Civil Service World. So one of the challenges of bringing people in to tech roles from the private sector is salaries. I was wondering how they would work with these secondments, whether the civil service would pay part of the salary, or before one of you changed the salary for that period.
And your neighbour.
Just building on the point about the secondment scheme, as you said, government has quite a mature and large digital and data profession, many of whom may indeed have worked for big tech firms before. I wondered if you could comment specifically on what you hope these people coming in on secondments would bring, or how they would benefit. Would they provide something that's not already there?
Thank you very much.
Really kind. I'll come to Martin last. On the, you're absolutely right in saying that we've got a large number of people in the civil service who are digital experts, but you know the way the world's going, the more we have, the better. It is, and if you look at the percentage, while it's a large number, if you look at the percentage of our colleagues in the civil service who have got digital skills and compare that with the best in class in the private sector, or just compare it with the private sector full stop, you'll find that we're sadly lacking. So we still need to do more to recruit. And also, as I said in the speech, we need to do more to ensure that senior management knows how best to tap into those skills. And it's like people will consider what they want of it. On the plan we have in September to have a single day's training where everybody gets their head around data at their different scales, levels of development, I think it shows our determination to back those digital skills right the way through the service. So there are a large number of colleagues. We really do need more of them. On the DDAP pay framework, as you know, was inclined to be more flexible to ensure that we do retain those skills. On secondments, there is an ability to be flexible, but I see a huge opportunity for companies to second on their own pay bill, with us doing a recharge arrangement into the civil service. And look, I know we've got a lot of good colleagues. I know a lot have come from the private sector. But this is such a fast-moving world. To have the experience of people coming in with fresh ideas straight from the private sector on a secondment basis, I think that has more to add, and it means that they're one of the team. So one of our objectives is to increase digital employees. You heard what I said about apprenticeships as a way of continuing to build the throughput for the future. We spend a huge amount of money on contractors. I appreciate that having people on secondment, they're not fully fledged civil servants there for the long term, but they are even more part of the team, and you never know, people may be on a secondment 10, 20 years later, say actually what I've always wanted to do is get back to the public sector. It's building that those links and expanding our team and expanding the number of fresh ideas. So I think there's a lot to go for it. On Martin's question regarding AI, the jury is completely out. So what we know is that AI will have a revolutionary impact on a whole range of sectors right the way across the economy. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can draw an analogy in terms of that means we need to have X thousand fewer people by a certain date. What we do need to know is that we can harness the opportunities that AI can bring. But will always be plenty of stuff to do across government. So I'm not going to get drawn on what we think the impact will be. Certainly not at a stage when we've got so much more work to do about how we're going to be able to use AI and how effective it can be to make us more productive. But more productive it will make us.
Thank you. And another round of questions. Yes, 1, 2, and 3.
Good afternoon, Mr. Quin. Aubrey Allegretti from The Guardian. You talked in your speech about utilising digital talent, and you will need that to solve the perennial problem of helping Boris Johnson access his old phone so that he can hand over messages requested by the COVID inquiry. There has been quite a lot of confusion about this, and bereaved families would like some answers, so I'm wondering if you can clear up for us. Is the government dragging its feet, or have you done all you can to help Mr. Johnson safely access those messages so they can be passed to the inquiry? Thank you.
The latter. So I'm not up to speed on it. I've not spoken about it to anyone for 2 or 3 days, but the government position is very clear that we're there to support him to ensure that he can provide the information to the inquiry.
So you've done all you can?
We are committed to doing all we can.
Caroline Flynn McLeod, Terrington Management. I've got a much more sort of basic, simple question. I know it's really important to be able to give people variety and move them around and let them move from department to department. But as someone in industry, I notice that there is a decided loss of corporate memory, continuity and expertise, and actually industry itself sometimes is having to help civil servants relearn some of the lessons from the past. And that's sort of the opposite, the moving them around, opposite of what the HCDC is recommending this week of we need to keep people certainly in procurement jobs, for defence procurement anyway, slightly longer. And that is always a frustrating thing for industry. And you might like to pass comment on that. The other thing is my concern, because we are having a number of cases seemingly of a more politicised civil service, my concern about the lack of understanding of the values and ethos of the civil service on the part of civil servants coming in. And that's based on an exchange with a number of file streamers that I had in a pub in Westminster not so long ago, who had never heard of, they'd never heard of Northcote Trevelyan. They'd not heard the name Peter Hennessy, and they didn't understand why they couldn't give, quote, their own opinion. And I advise them there are some mechanisms for doing that. So this dispersal around the country, and you know, people coming in from outside, they're not being imbued with the values either. So sorry, 2 things, quite a long question. But
No, two great questions.
2 great questions. And I'll just take one more, and then...
Thanks so much. It was really good to hear you talk a little bit about the role of public bodies in delivery of government. I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about, once you've decided that government should perform a function and that it's worth spending money on something, how you decide whether it should be done by a department or by a public body. And to declare an interest, I'm Matthew Gill from the Institute for Government. We've recently published a report looking a little bit at this, and wonder whether you would be open to reconsidering the current guidance, which says that public bodies should be a last resort for delivery.
It was a leading last question. Would I consider it? And to which I'll give you a very straight answer. No, I'm afraid. I really do think it should be a last resort. But the reason I say that is not because I've got a down on public bodies. No, they do a phenomenally good job. So when I say it's not a preferred option, sometimes it is the right option, and when it's the right option, it should be encouraged and supported, and that's the right thing to do. But there is a risk with public bodies. The risks which we've got to be continually alive to is, firstly, they get created and become out of sight and out of mind. I think I've referred to it in the speech as they can get divorced from a culture of continuous improvement. So we need to make certain that when we create public bodies, we don't forget about them. We continually are asking the question, are they fit for purpose? Are they doing the right thing? Do we still need this entire area of endeavour? Now, I am routinely, and it's lovely to see my permanent secretary in the audience keeping an eye on me. As he well knows, I am routinely having to go through and work through priorities and work through, do we really need to do this? I've got budget, we've got the ESR coming through. how do I recycle cash? I really want to do this amazing thing. How do I find the money? So there is a risk when you set up public bodies. You've got to make certain that you're continually reviewing that they are doing the right thing and that we actually need them and that they're doing it as efficiently as possible. That's why we have the review mechanism. And as I say, I've got no problems with having public bodies, but I'm always sceptical when ministers come to me asking for a new public body. If they want it as a public body, because that's the right way of dealing with of delivery, and it needs to be independent of government for some reason, well, fine. If it ticks enough boxes, they can have it. If it's more of a gimmick, they certainly can't, because that risks becoming expensive and a long-term overhead to the taxpayer that we want to avoid. So that's a straight answer to a genuine question.
I agree with you. I think you can believe all of that, and also think that if public bodies are a more efficient, more effective way of doing something, you might still do it.
I've got no problems with that. So where they are more effective and more efficient, fine. That's great. And there are cases where they definitely are, and that's absolutely supported. So do I have a target of 125 public bodies? Let's do away with 50 of them. No. Do we have a review process to say, are you sure you can combine your functions with X, Y, Z? Are you sure? That is that's necessary scrutiny. To Caroline's two questions, both of which are great. On the SROs and on longevity in post. I mean, you're 100% right. I wish I could say you were the first person to stumble across that. If you read Fulton back in '68, Fulton report was very concerned about the length of time, and I quoted Sir Arnold. It is an ongoing issue across government. In the MOD, whilst I was there, we did increase the tenure of SROs, and we also made certain that SROs have more 100% time commitment to one project. Incredibly important. So this is reinforcing the fact, this isn't some sort of, there you go, Jim or Jane, you're responsible for that. This is a letter to Parliament setting out, you are responsible for the delivery of this project. It's an important undertaking. So we have to support them. We have to make certain that they have enough of their time cleared that they can do the job. And we want them to stay in post. If you look at some of our international comparators, the Admiral who looks after the US nuclear submarine program, I recall meeting on a number of occasions. I think he'd been in post for years. I think he'd been promoted twice in post. That kind of stuff we need to be very acutely aware of. So people must be able to be promoted in post. And if we can get capability-based pay right, I think that's another incentive to say, thank you, go right the way through, make certain you've delivered this, and there's upside for you doing so. And lastly, your reference to Northcote Trevelyan, how on earth could a fast streamer not be fully aware? And actually, it's not very long to read. I mean, they should all be encouraged to read Northcote Trevelyan and get a lot out of it. I'm sorry to hear what you say. So all I can say is that my personal experience of dealing with civil servants in general, but that includes a lot of fast streamers, they are imbued with a sense of public service ethic, and that is incredibly important. It's incredibly important that we, all of us, have a role in ensuring the impartiality of the civil service. And when I say all of us, I don't necessarily mean everybody in this room. I think in Parliament we've all got a role to play in ensuring that what is a great tradition in this country, and it needs to be maintained, is that quality of advice that comes from an impartial view being given to ministers. And I'll have a words with people on the fast stream programme to make certain that Northcote Trevelyan is... You put them right.
They were taking notes.
I think that's a very nice note on which to finish. I'm afraid the Minister does have to go now, so if we could all show our appreciation in the usual way. Thank you very much.